pool maintenance.
Pool maintenance and
This episode is sponsored by
supplies.
Pinch a Penny Pools.
You used to be a pool boy, didn't you?
Oh, wow.
I am a pool boy. I've never been a pool boy. I don't even like the pool.
Really?
Nothing against your pool.
Oh, yeah, that's right. You didn't swim last time
No,
either.
I don't like to swim. I call
At
it,
all?
it's like butt soup.
Even in this, what about the ocean?
Nah.
It's where fish pee all day.
I love the ocean. It's beautiful, but I just look. I don't get in. This
Oh.
is gross. It's like,
It's pretty gross.
It is,
but a
especially when you
pool-
hit a warm spot.
yeah.
I try not to think about it, but it is pretty gross. Like, all the bodily fluids are in there.
The ocean's big, but like a pool is like, you're swimming in somebody's bathwater. And it's just, I'm not a fan.
I guess that's why Carmichael makes you, or they don't make you, but they prefer everybody to take a shower before they go.
Well, I've heard that bleach smell that you smell is the actual chemicals trying to, what is it called? Like,
Deteriorate your skin.
basically take care of the fecal matter and the urine that's in the pool.
Do you remember that
That's what
show
it's
from the
for.
1990s, Fecal Matters?
Uh-uh.
No, that was Family Matters. Never mind. With Urkel.
Fecal matter.
Yeah, but that's what pretty much what all that stuff's for is for the agents that should not be in the pool.
Well, you're not
water.
even a pool boy like Jeff
Russian
is.
agents.
No, I'm not
What
a
made you
pool
think
boy.
I was a pool boy?
Because you were from Florida, and
Just how pale I am?
I know.
All the sun I don't get?
I know that everybody in Florida has a pool, right?
It must be that marvelous.
I grew up
thing.
on a lake, but we didn't have a pool. We were
Really?
we were too poor.
We vacate down in Rotunda, and it's a retirement community, but every single person, every house has a lanai and a pool.
Yep.
And I just figured that was a given for Florida.
There's a lot of pools.
I didn't grow up in Florida, but I didn't grow up with the pool either.
Who's that noise?
I guess that's to say, hurry it up there. God's saying, like, get this show on the road.
Well, if James would have
But
got
hello.
here on time.
I was here on time, sir, with 2 burgers in my belly and picking up my son from work.
Sounds like rap lyrics. I refuse to believe that these are current event topics.
What kind of operation?
Irenaeus of Lion.
Erroneous?
That's not a current event topic. This
is from USA Today.
Historic article.
From 2,000 years ago.
Yes. We're going to maybe discuss some of them. Hello and welcome to the Word Lover Podcast. I'm your host, James Beasley, here with
Josh,
and
Jeff, the
And-
pool boy.
the pool boy.
yes, but you can tell it by your tan.
Yep.
And we're going to be discussing some articles and some news events, and just try to get back into Proverbs 16.
Not
If-
current news events.
Some of them are
Oh, okay.
I like
very
this
current.
one.
Very current, but
It's a good one.
but we'll be hitting it, going back into Proverbs towards the end of it, trying to wrap up chapter 16. So, what kind of
Fair
article?
enough.
What kind of news have you came across your table during the week, or should I say, 3 weeks?
What? Look, so whatever articles you had sent me is what came across.
There's one of them in there that talked about second chances.
Oh.
And I know in a
yeah.
previous podcast, we discussed to some degree about people getting second chances in the ministry.
They shouldn't.
They shouldn't. Not at all.
Break it down. What's the synopsis of the article for those that didn't get a chance to read?
that article was about the ability for migrant Christians who come in
See,
having chances to like stay or to do the ministry without being deported on it. And I get all that.
there's another component to it then completely.
Yes, that's not what I was bringing that up for.
Oh, well, you just brought it up.
No, I was actually blown away earlier this week when I found out some, to me it was devastating news. And there was a pastor in Four Oaks who was arrested July 5th. He was arraigned that following Monday, and he goes back to court the 25th. But he is being charged right now with 5 counts of rape and 5 counts of indecent exposure, or I'm not sure how would you, or indecent liberties with a minor.
It's pretty heavy stuff.
It is. It is.
Do
severely
you know the guy at all? Like
Yeah,
that's,
that's the reason why it was so like close to home or devastating is before I met Angie, she attended that church, my wife, and he's the pastor that married us.
Oh, really?
Wow.
Yes.
The guy that was
Yeah,
arrested
the guy
is
that was
your
arrested
marrying
is,
pastor?
is the guy that married us.
Oh, man.
We were married in '08, and the alleged situation went on between 2013 and 14. So it was like 5 years after we were married.
So he did these things and then stopped doing them, or that's all the evidence that they have.
That's all the allegations, or I guess evidence, but they opened up the, I guess the, I don't know how would do, like, I guess the allegations were presented, and all of that it started at the end of June, so it happened very fast. I guess with the allegation wise, they only came forward now in 2019. So I guess the young lady would be, she's 19 years old now. She was 13 then. Or no, I'm not sure.
Pool boy.
But anyhow, that's what I'm
Somebody
saying.
needs some chlorine.
Yes, I mean,
What?
or it's all that helium we were
Well,
using
so
at the beginning of the show.
what kind of feelings does this make you have?
Well, as of right now, I pray the truth gets known, because I'm not sure which way to take it. Because
But you
I
don't
wouldn't
think it's
expect
true?
it.
Is the question like whether or not there's room for repentance and getting back into...
If he's guilty, is there room for repentance?
Right.
But let's just think about he's not necessarily guilty,
Right.
because it's just allegations. It's he said, she said right now until everything's brought to court. But either way, this man's life is ruined.
But on the
But-
topic of second chances, though,
Yes, if it's second chance,
if something like
he's
this were to
guilty,
be true,
what kind of chance do you think he should have when it comes either to the ministry or to or whatever in the kingdom?
Well, it's just like anything else. Even if you start with no experience, you have to start somewhere and like work your way back up. And I think that's what we landed on last time. Is just
Yeah.
you have to prove it first of all. Like, you don't just accept somebody back into a ministry. I mean, that's just
Well, I guess
foolish.
legally he would never be able to go back, because he'd always have to be around children.
Yeah, that's true.
So I guess it'd be sort of shot on a legal side of it. But I was wrestling with that. Just having somebody that close to home.
Well, I mean, did you stay in touch with him? Like, does he?
We off and on, the actual my kids used to go to his wife used to run, or not run, but work like all the time in the library in Benson. We used to take our kids down there all the time because we knew them. We used to go.
But that's kind of, I mean, that's what I'm
to-
talking about. How does that make you feel, knowing that your kids were with this man that has been?
Well, that was his wife at that time, but
Oh,
I don't know.
okay.
But they never actually just been with him, so I don't really have any of those kind of feelings. But it's like he was the active pastor up until the 5th of this month, and he resigned immediately. But we used to go every year, or try to. In the last 2 years, we haven't been able to because of activities and stuff in our church and family. But to their homecoming every fall. So we used to stay around and go up there, and I actually have family that go to that church.
Wow.
Ooh, popping.
you hear that?
Whoa.
There's some thunder and lightning.
Does
I seen it
lightning-
in
Lightning chase up
airwaves.
the headphone wire and scramble your brain.
Electricity.
I once heard that lightning is made of electricity. Scary.
I
and
don't
we're
know
all
about that.
and we're all plugged into the what's it, static electricity?
No,
And-
I'm just.
oh, I'm gonna say wow.
I was joking about the electricity part. I mean, it's true.
And we're all plugged into an
Well, that-
electrical circuit.
Says the pool boy, like he knows anything
Listen.
about
Yeah,
electricity.
Listen, I know what I'm
He
talking
knows
about.
everything about water and electricity.
Yep.
But anyhow, that's what made me want to do the second chances. But the articles that really caught my attention was the one about Norman
Erroneous.
Geisler.
not Irenaeus, but it was Norman Geisler, because he was like if you agreed with every point of his theology or not,
Did you?
he was a powerhouse. I would say in not only the debate side of the field, but in Christian theology and in the way people see things, especially in the Western hemisphere. Have you read much about him?
I actually haven't. I know that his name pops up in several of the things that I read. Like he's cited for saying different or quoting different things, but
So like William
I've not-
William Craig, he's always cited.
Yeah, I hear the name a lot, but I have never.
Okay.
William Lane
dug into the
Craig.
guy.
It's hard for me to follow. Like I would have to like
He's very smart.
squint my eyes and like tense up my fists.
Read and reread and reread.
Yeah, and kind of like write it down. Like, what is it? An idiot's guide.
I
to
own
Learning.
a couple of his books, and I'm like,
Did you struggle?
Craig or
William
Geisler?
Lane Craig.
Okay.
And it was aspirational purchases, and then I'm like, yeah, I don't know if I'm gonna. I might have to
I
get
own
like,
a few of
the kids version.
I own a few of Craig's too, and I think he's pretty good.
Oh, I'm very excited to hear him talk because although I don't agree with everything he's ever said, some of his, there've been a couple things that he's brought up and I'm like, I'd have to, think about that. But the fact that he can kind of go toe to toe with
Yes.
anybody
Yeah.
and come across as intelligent,
Yep.
well informed,
He can put his arguments together very well.
and I've never heard him be rude or disrespectful. He always seems, to know his stuff well enough to not have to go that route.
Yeah, you can sling the dirt all you want, but then it doesn't really make any sense for anybody.
Yep. At the end of the day, someone's going to have to clean it up. I'd
So,
rather not be you.
what are your thoughts since you?
I just thought it was.
obviously the only one that knows about Norman.
So he passed away.
Yeah, he passed away. He passed away within 2 years after he retired.
Well, I mean that's pretty common too,
Is
isn't
it?
it? Yeah, people retire, stop moving, and
Stop
die.
moving and they die.
According to Wikipedia, he was a systematic theologian.
Yep.
Systematic.
Yep.
Define that.
I'd like to say
Systematic is
systemic.
something that is put forth in a fluid system, like A, B, C, D order, and he would like go through each and every point within Christian doctrine and bring out or discuss the theology of what we believe. Such, just like if you looked up salvation and then sin and sanctification, different points like that, he would go through the different facets of the Christian doctrines just to bring them out and discuss the theology behind them. And so I have a couple of his systematic theology books at home, which I don't have the whole set of any of them, but what I have is pretty well written. So I thought he was an interesting dude.
Yeah, he seems like I might look him up after we're done.
Yes.
I probably would have looked him up before we had the podcast had I known.
To check your junk mail.
Exactly.
Yes. Check your junk mail in your other account.
The headline of the article caught my attention where it said it was, quote unquote, didn't have enough faith to be an atheist.
Yes.
That always, faith, atheist, what have you, that always piques my interest. But scanning through the article, I don't think that he was ever an atheist. Or was he? Actually, maybe did it say they grew up in
I've
non-Christian
never heard
households?
anything about
Where'd that article?
Geisler being an atheist, but
Now,
he-
Theodore Geisel
in
was
his
Dr. Seuss.
in
Just
his
to clarify.
debates with other like atheists and other, I guess, theologians and whatever. That's one of his more popular things is because he says it takes more faith to be an atheist than it does to actually believe what Christianity is saying, because there's so much supporting Christianity, and that's where where that comes from is all
Oh,
of
here
his
it is.
discussions with it.
He was on a team of theologians that wrote the 1978 Chicago Statement on Biblical Inerrancy and co-wrote the popular book I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist in 2004.
Looks like we got some homework,
Yeah.
Josh.
Do you have that?
I do not have that book.
Surprisingly.
Yes. I'll have to put it on my to acquire list.
Mm-hmm.
But
And-
that's kind of a growing, realization for me. Maybe I mentioned it last time, but this idea that I've started to realize that I don't think anybody has the honest belief that there's no evidence for God, that there's no, you know what I mean? Because I've started to see too much, and this is biblical, where what's the verse where it says, even the heavens call out.
Romans chapter 1.
Nobody can deny that there's
Yep.
evidence. But yeah, I mean, you hear like atheists, atheist philosophers, and my buddy Dawkins.
Yeah, Richard Dawkins.
I was gonna say Robert Dawkins. That was my former doctor. I thought that was
Not that he's calling
interesting.
you an atheist, sir.
Right.
if you
Yeah,
say-
wherever you are. But Dawkins, in that documentary that I watched where he kind of gets painted into a corner, and he's like, well, what could explain the apparent is the term he used, the apparent design, and that you see in biology and DNA and what have you. And then it's just like, it's laughable. And then I saw another video. I don't know if I shared it with you, but I just recently saw a video where Dawkins was on a panel, and it wasn't just atheists. It was apparently a mix. There were plenty of believers there because there was a lot of clapping when he started to, be mocked almost. But people were laughing in the audience when he said, he was trying to explain creation from nothing. And he's like, well, nothing, the nothing was, what we know about the nothing was that it had gravity, or he started, making these absurd definitions, and people in the audience started laughing, and he got upset. He's like, what are you laughing at? And then people laughed even more. And then the guy, somebody else on the panel, I think he may have been a man of color.
A priest?
Yeah, there you go. Somebody spoke up and said, well, sir, your definition of nothing is kind of, entertaining or whatever. But anyways, this idea that there's just really I don't think there is, enough evidence out there for the media to be as strong as everybody makes it out to be an open and shut case. Oh, Christianity is laughable because only narrow-minded people would believe in a creator. But then you start digging into it, and the people that are laughing have really no...
They actually are more narrow-minded than...
Well, they have no
people.
evidence. I'm like, well, okay, what are you laughing about? You explain to me. What's your evidence for design from accident, And then they can't do it. And then that's when they start to say, well, what could have happened? And I just read an article about this. It was on USA Today, I think. Scientists recently revealed that maybe, you've heard this before, this idea that maybe Mars had life on it, and then an impact on Mars, broke a chunk off, and then it kind of like, contaminated, quote unquote, contaminated the Earth with life. And then that maybe explains how it jump-started life, because there's just not enough time. I pinned it. It was an interesting article.
Is that the one where they try to explain why there's why they think there used to be or deposits of water or water droplets?
Well, I would say that even like an average person doesn't even know what they believe. Mm-hmm. Like they choose to pretty much subscribe to whatever the newest
beyond just social rhetoric.
Right. I mean, they don't have any idea.
I think that's also why, in Romans chapter 1, which we just alluded to, and also in 2 Peter, when he's talking about how these people willfully ignore the facts. It's not that it's not there and they can't see it. It's just that you have to turn a blind eye to it in order to persist in what makes you feel more comfortable in what.
Well, and that's the phrase that keeps on coming up. And there was, it's not just Dawkins, but he was using that phrase of apparent design, or
that's the same episode.
There's another phrase
that's
that he
the same
uses.
Debate that he actually after that went into, like mocking the God of the Bible about how he could allow all these atrocities that he would, even if he was real, he wouldn't want to believe in anyhow. It's they go from one extreme to the other because they don't want to face the reality that we can't understand God's actions 100%, and yet we want to sit here as his judge.
But your faith isn't scientific, so you lose all credibility, James.
Faith isn't scientific?
Not at all.
No faith is scientific, which is why Norman Geisler, when he says that I don't have the faith to be an atheist, it takes more faith to believe.
But I think there is science. I mean, that's my thing. I mean, obviously, to a point, if it was just science, I think everybody would be a believer, because science, it should blow your mind. When you see, the quote-unquote book of life of DNA, billions of lines of, letters representing, I'm not a biologist, but I don't know if it's true or not, but anyways, supposedly, Bill Gates, is it? No. Who's the Microsoft guy? Is that Bill Gates?
Yeah, Bill Gates.
Yeah. It was Bill Gates that said something about, that DNA is computer programming.
Yep.
Beyond anything we've ever seen. Well, then,
absolutely,
for somebody to say that, especially somebody that knows what they're talking about when it comes to computer programming, and it's at a higher level than our brains can even handle. I mean, that just, the idea that you could just dismiss that as like, a fluke is just absurd.
Yep.
and then for the, top of the line atheists, out there saying, well, it's a quote unquote apparent. You have to ignore, you have to dismiss, or you have to remind yourself, is the phrase that they use. You have to remind yourself that this is only apparent design.
Well,
why do you have to remind yourself?
and-
If you kept on falling out of a tree and hitting the ground, hey, this apparent gravity, we have to remind ourselves it's an illusion. I mean, that's just stop.
That's one
sounding
reason
so
why
stupid.
I do like philosophy, because everything.
what?
No, I have always liked philosophy, sir, and because everything in life, it cannot be proved by physical data, and the only thing that can be scientific is things that can be empirically looked at and studied and examined, but by default, that's going to fall short of everything that reality exists of. So you automatically move from science into philosophy, which is why all of science used to be a branch of philosophy, because you had to take that data and reason data from like reasoning and other areas and theology. Because what did I think it was Galileo who said that science is just a handmaiden of religion. They should go hand in hand, because we can't get all the information we need just from empirical data. We also need revealed data. So it has to go hand in hand, because reason would show you that the science points to is computer programming. Well, that's as far as it's going to go. It's not going to sit there and tell you God made me,
Right.
but it's going to show you that, hey, this could not
That it's not
happen
an
without
accident.
something else. So the philosophy steps in after that and says, well, what or who is that something else?
But you do
because
have
it can't do it by
chance.
itself.
You have the chance. Like, you're talking billions and billions and hundreds of billions.
Well,
of
that was
years.
the interesting with that article
The
that I just
primordial
recently,
soup.
and I can't open it up because I'm on the LTE.
I
that
would
doesn't work.
disagree with that statement,
But this article, it was, I'll see if I can open it. It was talking about a scientist that said that he wishes that there were more billions of years. He wants there to be thousands of billions of years.
Right.
Then he could more easily explain evolution. And he said, the fact that the universe, not just the planet Earth, the planet Earth, 4 billion years old is the theory or whatever, the universe, however many billions. And he said, there's just not enough time to work with, because when they go back to what they think is the moment where you start to see evidence of the simple, and he said simple really isn't simple at all. This is an atheist. He said, you go back to that point and there's just not enough time to get to there. The Earth hasn't been around that long, even to him, who says it's billions of years old. And he said the universe itself is just not old enough to really explain it very well. And he said if he really had it his way, he'd, be able to say that there are thousands of billions of years. Then he might be able, That's the same article they talked about. Then how do you explain it? Well, maybe it started out, it got a jump start. It came from Mars. It had already kind of started up, and then it came
that's
in.
the problem with those kind
You're
of
kicking the
arguments
can down the
is
road.
when you add years, I don't care how many billions of years, even 1 billion of years, all you're doing is just moving the question to time, and then you just keep pushing it further and further back, and you have to get more and more theories, and it's never going to end. So you just need to just nip it in the bud and say, well, the only way it could come from nothing is it has to have a source that could be outside of itself,
Right.
and then create it.
Well,
Well,
Ravi Zacharias, he's got a video where he's used this before, but anyways, he is, I guess, describing an interaction that he had with a non-believer, and he's like, so your theory is that, with enough, woo 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 is the sound effect for time,
Yeah.
and blub 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 is the sound effect for matter, and throw in some chants. I don't think he had a sound effect for chants, but ta-da. And he says, so that's where it all came from, is a little bit of woo 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 and some blub blub blub. And everybody's laughing because it sounds so absurd. I know it's the sound effects, only seem to mock it a little bit more, but it just, come on, you're being intellectually dishonest when you say, oh, well, with enough time. I mean, you know better than that, because I can promise you, we just had at church, we had the jam camp that we keep on, every summer we have these, summer camps, and I've been, blessed to be, teaching a class during that time, and I always use origami to kind of remind the students, hey, before we get started, let me remind you that we're talking about a real God here. There's evidence upon evidence. I said, if this little origami, bird just descended upon you, you'd be like, who threw that? Where did it come from? Who made it? Oh, no, it just kind of popped out of nowhere by accident. With enough.
That's a good
Hey,
one.
listen, we've been in existence for billions of years, right, kids? surely over the course of billions of years, sooner or later, an origami bird is going to pop into existence, right? I mean, this is the stupidest thing you've ever heard. And so
Since you put it that way.
well, if a piece of origami
That's
is
a good way to-
clearly evident of,
Yeah.
of somebody's mind, even the paper before you fold it is very clearly designed. It didn't just make itself.
That's the same principle they were getting at with the watch theory and all that kind of stuff.
But you're going back to the selfishness and the stubbornness of the human being, right? Like nobody wants to bow down to a god. We want control of everything, and concluding our lives, or we're not going to submit. There's just no way.
Well, and then
We're our
who's
own gods
the
today.
the Banana Man? They call him Banana Man. What's his name? He and Kirk Cameron.
Oh,
Way of
Ken
Life
Ham?
Minute is no, not Ken Ham. He's Australian. Ken Ham's Australian too.
oh,
isn't he?
Ken Ham is Australian.
No, I'm talking about who's the other guy?
Great comfort.
Ray Comfort. There he goes.
So
So
heard of him.
so he does I think a great job. He just pedals up. He's riding his bike with his little dog wearing sunglasses, and he rides up to just people on the street, and he's like, can I ask you a question? And he just he just does it. But he just calls him out. He said, listen, I have a theory. You tell me if I'm wrong. My theory is that you don't want there to be God, because if you're God, then sex out of marriage doesn't really matter, and you can lie and cheat and steal, and it doesn't really matter. Am I right? And more often than not, they're college students sometimes they're professors, sometimes they're just people on the street, and a lot of times they're just flat out honest. When there's a camera in their face too, and they're like, well, yeah, you're right. I'm like, that takes some guts to admit, you're right. I just want to be my own God so that I can, continue
Do what I
having
want
fun.
to.
Or how much are they just saying, yeah, you're right, just to get him out
Get
of
him
the
out.
face?
It's an awkward encounter. I'm
It
I'm
is.
very impressed that people are willing to do that, because,
That does take some guts.
Maybe we should take to the streets.
I would love to. I would love to have that.
I have the GoPro that you can get up
I
and
don't
running.
know that I could mix another mic in, but yeah,
You need a longer cord.
Well, we have another microphone. You just have to be able to do it. Yeah, with a
drive
reel
around.
upon reel upon reel.
All right, we were talking about the theologian
Geisler.
Geisler, and I want to say Dr. Seuss now because you
Theodore
put that in my
Geisel.
head.
Yeah.
So, what is this next article here,
This,
Mr. James?
this one was just something I thought you might find interesting. But the biggest thing.
Well, you were wrong.
You're
No,
dead wrong about that.
He's been dead for years. But it's Irenaeus of Leon or however you want to pronounce it. And the only reason why this one stood out to me is that he was the what the subtitle says, passionate apologist to the Gnostics, and that's something that we all are actually attempting to do in today's world, because everybody has their view of what wisdom or knowledge is today. And especially in the college systems, they're being told that this is knowledge, or this is the way you're supposed to think or believe about the world. And that's exactly what we're going up against, is the same thing the very same thing they were going up against in the first few hundred years of the church. And
how did he? What is his name? Irenaeus of Leon. How did he handle it?
I think it's pronounced Irenaeus.
That's what I've heard. Irenaeus.
What did he do?
Huh?
What did he do?
He debated him, and he wrote the huge work against heresies, and it's very lengthy, and you probably have to reread it several times too. I haven't.
What
read
are you
the
trying
whole
to
thing.
say, James?
Nothing.
Go ahead, out with it.
I haven't said anything.
If you can read.
Yeah, if you can.
Dog.
I don't think dogs in
But-
that book.
But
I mean, I
the only thing that was
somewhere.
is just about Gnosticism and how, a lot of these things we think get lost in, I would say, translation, because you read about this kind of stuff in the scriptures in the New Testament, and how Paul was going against Gnosticism and the Judaizers and stuff like that. And in today's world, we're so Christianized that I think that those kind of ideas or reasonings sort of like slip by the wayside, because we're not like alert about them, because we think that's all like past century old
What
church
exactly is
stuff.
Christianized?
Huh?
What exactly is Christianized? Would you say?
Our mentality.
Like
And
we're
it-
so
and-
used to it that we're
and-
kind of desensitized.
And in that regards, Christianized is that our culture is pretty much we grew up with the church. And that's why I'm saying all these atheists and people who are growing up in the scientific field and all that, they can put out these claims and all that, but everything in especially Western society grew up with a Christian mentality and like being nurtured by Christian doctrine and ideas. So yes, what they're doing is they think they have all this proof, but all their proof is still based upon research done by Christian scientists and philosophers who tried to pass the baton on. And as time went on, and as we got more lax about guarding the truths of the faith, we started having a lot more, I would say, outpouring of like I would say self-centered or self-seeking Gnosticism, and we have it blatantly in our churches in our culture today. But I don't think it's called out like that anymore because he went out there and actually debated with him and confronted it. But a lot of times we have that today too. I mean, like Craig.
Are you talking about like the myth that this America's like a Christian nation?
No, not a Christian nation.
Western culture itself.
People are like, well, we have our own views and all that. And they think that we're trying to push Christianity on them.
Well, that's all
But
evidence.
it's just like
just
anybody
laying
who
there.
says or wants to come in science or anything, they're coming from a whole society and framework
Whether they know
that
it
was
or not.
nurtured in Christianity.
Right.
Yeah, if they accept it or not, and yet they want to come against us as if we're the ones telling something new.
Well, it's the same thing. Like William Lane Craig and a lot of the other Christian philosophers and theologians, they have a problem with you're using my God's law, or at least I don't know if it's Turek, one of those guys that's like he's an apologist, and he's got this thing of when you debate with an atheist, correcting them and saying, well, listen, do you understand that you're starting from a framework of logic?
Mm-hmm.
That alone means that there's logic to, there's, if you're really saying that there's creation from nothing, then nonsense is king, right? Nothing really has meaning. Words don't have meaning. In fact, you hear a lot of people saying, I can't remember who the guy was. I was listening to a podcast recently, and he was talking about I believe a Christian author going back and saying that he's kind of rethinking some of his previous works and saying that it's all about interpretation, that words don't really contain their own meaning, and that now he's kind of opened his mind. I guess he's woke, and he realizes that no, it's really what you bring to the table as the reader. And
Which defies all logic.
Yeah, right.
And
so
centuries
then he's
of
like,
the
well,
church.
in that case, what you're saying, that nothing really has meaning, you're making that statement as though that statement has meaning, right? So
Well,
it's just like the lack of logic that these guys bring.
James is a really big word guy too, and there's not much that'll get by him.
This James.
What?
Yeah.
I just lost all those words you said.
The way that you interpret the word is really important to you, I've noticed.
The way it's interpreted is important, and I do like sitting thinking about what or how something is spoken, and it's just like I don't like the way
Not to say though that I think what you're getting at is, well, wait, don't you bring your own meaning to things? Well, not ultimately. There's got to be a core truth.
But that's true as well. It's got to start somewhere.
The concern
right?
being that some of these even quote unquote Christian authors and stuff saying that it's all up for interpretation, with the hopes that I guess then we can read into the Bible whatever we want.
Yeah.
We can make it say we can twist it and turn it. Well, yeah, unfortunately we do.
If we read it out of context,
Right.
and that's what. We all come in with our different understanding of what words are, that how words are used around us all the time.
Right. This is what this verse means to me.
Yeah.
Is you hear that a lot, when in fact, well, wait, this was written to this audience at this time for this reason.
Yep.
It wasn't written for you today. I mean, there might be things that you can get from it, sure.
Yeah. And what that is a improper hermeneutic.
Mm-hmm.
It's saying, well, you can they actually teach it. I found this real strong in the English literature class I took, and it was reading poetry, but they were reading it. How does it make you feel,
Mm-hmm.
and all this kind of stuff. When a poet wrote a poem to express a particular idea or something or emotion that was going on in them or around them, trying to capture something so that you can experience what they were doing or feeling, not just what you wanted to feel.
My wife's favorite example of that is in high school. Her humanities class, or maybe it was her gifted class. They went and heard an author speak, and the teacher, trying to sound all fancy pants, was saying, well, we read your work and da da da, and here's what we think it meant. And he laughed and said, that's not what it meant. Like he basically said, like, I'm tired of people trying to like interpret, and no, this is what it meant. Stop trying to reinvent things. But that's what we, and like you said, we even do it now
We
with the
stray
Bible.
from that hermeneutic with the Bible, instead of reading it in the context of what was being meant or said, we want to put it into our own.
But there's so many. I guess that's the reason for all the denominations, right? I mean, people discerning things differently or having a different.
That's
perspective.
a little different.
I mean, you got Rob Bell. I'm sure you know Rob Bell, right?
I know there's some negative connotation to the guy. Is he the guy that?
He just believes that everybody
They jumped off the bandwagon.
will go to heaven, more or less. There's no hell, like that whole. But he's been heavily criticized. But this man, like, I'll let you borrow some of his works. It is really compelling, and it's like this man was Christ-centered at some point. He had to be for him to be able to make and create these videos and these books. But then now, like, how did he arrive to this point? And that's like he's a learned, like he's in God's word. Like he led a large church for a while, and it's just crazy.
A lot of
The
that
scary thing is that I think we're all susceptible to that. Is that you're still talking about popularity and church sizes, and you want to be
still
hermeneutics.
Humanity this side of glory.
One of my sons was saying is, and I won't say the artist's name, but she was apparently on American Idol. We were watching at my brother's house, and normally we don't watch TV at all. And anyways, we're watching American Idol, and it was a reminder why we don't watch TV. And he said, "Hey, is blah 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 a Christian or artist?" And my wife said, "Well, yes, she, as far as we can tell, she is, but it seems to be that she's becoming more mainstreamed, and therefore, there's probably this pressure to kind of fit what people want her to be."
Just singing what gets her the.
I think that's
most
a very
titles
How
and
about
stuff like that.
on that? Why don't we
That's
segue
the
into
other article about
the worship realm?
So I think that can happen with preachers or anybody.
I'm gonna go ahead
like-
and say a name.
Mhm.
I'm gonna see if it's still talking. And is she mainstream?
Kelly Clarkson,
Yeah, very very mainstream.
Kelly Pickler.
Because it just eluded me now.
LD.
Yes,
Yeah,
Lauren Daigle.
How dare you
My girls
bring up her name?
love her.
Really?
Yes, and we actually have all of her CDs too. She did. She started off as, I would say, more the lyrics to her songs on her first album and her, I guess, debut one. You could tell that she was singing about Jesus and God and stuff. On her more recent one, you can tell she's singing about God.
If you know what you're listening for.
Yes.
Almost like a code.
Well, it's like a lot of Christian, even songs, even today, most Christian artists, if you just listen to the lyrics, we know what they're talking about.
Right, it's the inside
But it's written.
joke.
It's written as in, and this is what's spiritualized, and worship music is supposed to be us singing to God, when hymns are us singing about Him. So that's why in a lot of modern Christian music and stuff like that, you start hearing, you can actually put it to almost anybody you want to if you really listen to it in a secular
Well, a lot of them
world.
sound like, you could pass them off as just simply love songs.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what they are. Love
Well,
songs
and they
to
are
Jesus.
absolutely love songs.
But they leave out
Right.
who they're talking about. Because, and I can understand. If I'm talking to you,
Right.
I'm not going to sit here and say your name all the time. It's not like Jeff, I want you to hear this. Jeff, do you want to talk to me? Jeff, hey, how you doing?
Right.
I would just talk to you, and I would understand that you're listening. And that's exactly where they're going with that. So the mainstream audience of this, and I do believe the mainstream audience of Lauren Daigle, still they understand who she's singing about because of who she started and all that. But I do believe that she's leaning more into the popularization of her music and trying to get it out there further because of the platforms that she's accepted and all that other kind of stuff too. So it's like, you know, she's along with a lot of them become, you know, like one of those that you got to walk a fine line, you know, and know the word to tell your kids, you know, this is where we would draw the line.
Well, it's
We
a
don't
reminder
accept this.
to, number one, do I carry myself, like if somebody were to say, hey, is Jeff a Christian? He is? Because, wait, I mean, am I flawlessly living out the life that Jesus would like me to live out? Absolutely not. So if, you know, suddenly I'm on Good Morning America, I'm sure I'm going to say something stupid, you know?
Yeah.
And so she's got a lot of pressure on herself, but she's also taken that responsibility on
she's
herself.
got that platform.
And I don't want to call out, you know, Madam Daigle, because I don't know.
I still think she's an
Well,
awesome
what about
artist.
so if I know that you've been around and are probably familiar with Amy Grant and Michael W. Smith. And
Baby.
they had a campaign where they went to the secular side and actually they topped the charts. And
What's
that
wrong with
the whole idea, because it wasn't strictly Christian, if you will, but they, in doing that, did they gather in that? Were they able to convince somebody or
I think
save a soul?
I mean, there's a lot, and I can't, you know, peel my finger at them too hard, because I'm sure that I would be. I mean, even now, I'm like, you know, oh man, what am I going to do if my school district where I work tries to force on us, you know, this open-minded platform of, you know, gender fluidity and what have you, like that they're apparently wanting to teach in the schools. I mean, I would hope that I would stand up and say, nope, I'm out. But at the same time, I'm like, oh man, I'm not going to do it. But
if you
would
don't
I just
accept it,
would I
but-
quietly sit back and just, you know,
and let them do it.
yeah, right.
I identify as a pool noodle.
But the same thing is,
I'm not surprised.
Pool boy.
but taking those platforms, I think, is part of the I would say the mix up of what we consider Christian. You know, if you look at where she went on this other platform, and you can say, well, is she a Christian because she did this? That's the wrong criteria to be judging if she's a Christian. It's the way she conducts herself and behaves, not where she's singing or what she's singing.
Well,
per
and
se.
I don't think it was what she was singing or where she was singing, but was, you know, apparently she was
dressed?
asked, like, you know, what do you think of I don't know, was it gay marriage, I think? Was that the question that they asked her?
I know.
Yes.
I,
It was about.
And
I know she
LGBT.
alluded the question. And
She did,
pointed-
but she didn't. She
pointed-
gave a vague answer.
She pointed to the scriptures and what she believed was right, but what it says, but she never really said what she believed, and she sort of like skirted around the issue. She never said she never said she supported it, but she never
was it
denied
and
it either, I guess.
I
It's
would
sort of like
pull it up, but
she's trying to walk the fence.
I don't have it, but what I heard, and maybe I'm wrong, so I apologize in advance if I'm wrong, was that, you know, her statement was something to the effect of, like, you know, well, who am I to judge? Or I'm not God, what do I know? You know, something like that, which is
a lot of Christians do that now.
well, and that's a hard position to be put in when you have the national spotlight
Yes.
on you, and you know that you have a lot of listeners that will instantly walk away. You know, oh well, in that case, you know,
But
click.
but in this, at the same token, you have people that are like, oh, wow, that's really open minded, and that, you know what I mean? Are you trying
Mislead 'em.
to are you trying to sing to the choir, or are you trying to, you know, win souls over?
Right,
And I
exactly.
think
Well,
there's
and I-
tact. There's tact there. I mean that it could
It's
be
the same
considered.
reason that I'm not out there like witnessing the way I'm supposed to be witnessing. Like, we just came back from DC, and boy, oh boy, I mean, there's just like, and it's not just DC. It's in my own neighborhoods too, but it's just so flagrant, you know, and blatant, and it's like, man, like, why am I not? Because I know if I were to say something, it's going to go over really, really poorly.
But that's
But it needs, but that's okay.
But
If
that's
it
the tact.
If your house is on
Yes.
fire, and you're like, well, I don't want to disturb my neighbors. You know, they're going to think I'm a crazy person. Or if I say that, you know what I mean?
But you wouldn't go like that. I think that's a completely different comparison, because you're going to win more people over with love.
Right.
And that, I mean, that's just
Well, and
it.
I'm not saying that I would go out there angrily doing it. You know, we had the
Yeah,
preacher guy at
But
UCF.
you would do it excitedly.
But you
and
can't wag your
encouraging.
finger in somebody's face and expect them to, like, even in Proverbs, that's what they're talking about, the tact and the tongue and how you present it, and the emotion behind it. And I get, like, I get how we're supposed to do it, and I think a lot of times we don't come out. We don't think about the perspective of the person.
It's
we're
just
trying to
it's just
witness to.
knowing that, like, even if it goes really well, there's going to be, to tell anybody, even a fellow believer, hey, I think you're living in sin. I think you need to change this.
Oh,
Nobody
yeah.
wants to
There's
hear
gonna
that.
be
No, exactly.
Nobody
It
wants
was-
to hear that. So to tell somebody that, like, that is not a believer, and you start to talk about, oh, so you think I'm going to hell? Is that it? I'm like, well,
That's it.
technically, yes.
But see, you mentioned Proverbs, but see, Proverbs also mentions that wise people heed rebukes. And a rebuke isn't something that's just nice and pleasant sounding. Now, it's done, I would say, if you do it wisely, it's done at the proper time and bringing up certain things.
Absolutely.
But it's not always going to come across to the person hearing it as love. Now, unless you just, even you can say it as pleasant as you can and with tact, and if they're not wanting to hear it, they're not going to take that as love.
Well,
But it's going to be a rebuke against what they're doing, and that needs to be said as well.
What I think the concern is, so these big name speakers, authors, singers, anybody that's got like a following, and that is their lifeblood, is to, how do you sell, records or books or speaking engagements if people no longer respect you or like you or agree with you? 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 years ago, wasn't that, you weren't losing followers on Twitter. You might get maybe some angry people, but, you'd move it to a different town and it'd be fine. You'd start over.
Or you just lost pupils in the academy.
You know what I mean? So I think the pressure is greater now, because now what you say can be, spread across the globe in a matter of seconds.
Definitely
And it's
travel
like,
far.
honestly, that's why I was kind of hesitant, do I want to say my last name on this podcast? Because thousands of people in this community know me. I've taught, in this community for 12 years, thousands of people, and it is kind of like, I don't want to misspeak. I don't want to say something hurtful.
this is your platform, Joe.
You know what I mean? Well, and so I'm like, and shame on me. I should be more willing to say things that might be
I'm
offensive.
shocked that you think that thousands of people would ever listen.
I know, right? But you know what I mean? Like, I can't go to I'm not saying I'm like world famous or anything.
No.
But within this community, I know, like, if I go to the store, there's going to be plenty of people I know. If I, whatever. And I like that. And I think what an awesome opportunity, especially with this new church plant that we're doing. I mean, this is my community right here. I can blindly pick a door and probably know who's going to answer that.
Right.
I mean, that's cool.
That is pretty. That's awesome.
But it's also kind of scary to think, man, if I say the wrong thing, like, say homosexuality,
Well-
I've got a lot of family members. When I say family, I'm like, within my school, what I consider them family. I mean, I've seen homosexuality. I've even seen a couple. I can think of one. What's the proper term? Transsexual? Is that the right term? What's the proper
Transvestite?
Well,
No, that's a particular. No, I would. I think transsexual might be.
like, what would Caitlyn Jenner? What's the PC term?
Transistor.
No, it might be. I think that is transsexual, not
Yeah.
transgender.
Yeah, but I've seen a lot, and I mean, after having thousands of families interact with you, you start to see that it covers everything. We're in one community, but we got multiple languages, plenty of different beliefs. We got Jehovah's Witnesses, we have atheists, we have. I mean, you name the belief, you name the race, you name the religion, you name whatever, and it's there. And so I'm hesitant, and so I can't fault these Christian singers that are like, especially as they get bigger and bigger and bigger, like, man, I don't want to get millions of people upset with me, and so they start to water things down a
How do
little
you
bit.
balance that line? Then?
Right, and that's the problem, is that Jesus wasn't going around saying, "Ooh, man, I'm getting kind of popular. 5,000 people showing up to hear me preach. I better water it down."
No, he just went right up in their face and
Right.
"You better eat this flesh."
But he also got killed, for that.
Yeah.
But he didn't
also-
hesitate. He's like, this is God's will. I'm going to do it. And if I
I think one of the things we're also scared of is that, when we're doing that, we don't want them to be mad at us and present it because it's what we believe in our opinion. Because our society is all about everybody having their own opinion now.
Oh, you're welcome to have your own opinion
Yeah.
if it agrees with the open-minded.
Yeah,
society.
open-mindedness and all that. But open-mindedness in itself, it should allow for all opinions.
Oh yeah, you'd imagine.
So it's not it's not about, oh well, you know, I believe homosexuality is wrong, which I can't make that judgment. No, the Bible calls it wrong, but it calls everything. I mean, it calls a lot of other things wrong too.
Right.
So why do I believe stealing is wrong? Well, let's get into what God's word says and see. This is why I'm coming across with the way I'm handling things in my life or this world. But look, it deals with, you know, murder and stealing and all this. But look here, it also deals with homosexuality. So, what does God say about it? And you can make up your mind. We can accept it. I'm loving it. I'll accept your choice, because it's your choice if you want to be with somebody, whoever you want to be with. It's not your choice, or it shouldn't be anyone else's freedom to make me have to accept that or support it. You don't have to accept what I'm saying or support it, but
Or rewrite the Bible.
But
to
yes, or rewrite
fit
it.
your
But
agenda.
this is where I'm getting it from.
Right.
This is what I believe, and if we're really going to be inclusive and open-minded, well, this is where I'm coming from. I'm trying to show it to you, and this is how this is how my worldview is being laid out. So let's compare them and see which one really fits. And
Well, and the key is, you know, I need to remind myself of this, is to be as loving and gentle as possible, because,
that's hard.
well, and especially when it's like the other side is angry.
Yes.
Oh, and that's exactly what it is. Like you,
And it seems like they're always angry.
well, they don't. I mean, it's like we talked about at the beginning. Like you don't want to bow down. You are your God, and you don't want to submit. And why should you? And somebody telling you that you're wrong is the last thing.
Well, I mean,
that
it's just,
Think how many prophets that were supporting Baal on top of Mount Carmel that Elijah had to counter, and yet they were doing that for what they believed was God. So today, if we all believe that ourselves are that God, how much more are we going to fight to the death? Not hopefully not literally, but
well, and
you know, do
my theory
all
is
we
the
can
reason
to
we're not
support it.
fighting to the death. You know, and I say this a lot, but I kind of realized it several years ago. You know, God bless America. We're so blessed to be, and I think so. But,
Absolutely.
But the idea that, you know, hey, we're not persecuted in America like they are in some other countries, because we're just rolling over and playing dead. We're doing a vanilla kind of Christianity, and what's not to like about that?
I have a theory. I don't know about a
Oh,
theory. Here we go.
Elvis
It's
is
not
dead.
nothing about a banana or nothing like that. But, but no, I'm saying we say, and I do believe God has blessed America, but in our culture, in our day and age, is it that God has blessed us or Satan has blinded us?
Mhm.
Because Satan isn't going to go after the one who isn't living for God or Christ. He's going to go after the ones that are.
Mm-hmm.
So if, as America, it's just like Israel, and they were blessed by God, they were given the land, the promised land, but when the next generation grew up and they did not know God, then they became wise in their own eyes, and they started doing what they wanted to, and then persecution came and all that kind of stuff. But it's like we started off good, and we're sort of like turning, or like you said, rolling over and not doing what we're supposed to do, be handing over that baton to the next generation. So now I don't really think we're putting up that much of a fight that Satan has to really deal with.
Oh, absolutely
anyhow.
not. Yeah.
So that's why we're not persecuted as what these other countries are.
I saw a quote the other day. It said something of, if God doesn't punish America, he owes
Sodom and
Gomorrah an apology. And I'm like, man,
That's
can't.
harsh, but
you know,
yeah.
I don't want to speak on behalf of God, heavens forbid. But man, you kind of feel it when you see some of the stuff.
You can see the logic in
Oh,
that statement.
man.
Not that you necessarily think that God should do that.
Right. Well, nobody wants it to happen to them. But yeah, to see this stuff and to read these headlines, I'm like, what in the world are we doing? It's just absolutely just mind-boggling. But I think that's why, you know, when people say, oh, we have it so, you know, nice here in America, it's because Christians aren't doing anything
well,
for people to get upset about.
We're too lax on the traditions that we've built up, and that's it. Like I go to church, I do, and that's
Yes.
the extent of it. And I know that that's a dead horse that everybody beats, but that's what we do.
But I mean, if we really, truly, even in a loving way, started to present the gospel with everybody that we talked to, not just, you know, the people that we're friends with, and call sin for sin and say, yes, abortion is murder. And, you know, if I saw somebody getting killed on the street, I would hope to goodness I would be brave enough to step in
try
and
to step
maybe
in.
even get killed in the process. But shame on me for not, just keep on walking.
And on that note, praise the Lord for those who are standing at the abortion clinic doors,
Right.
trying to intervene those ladies.
But if we
going in
all
there.
did, if every Christian, quote unquote Christian, went and straight to the abortion facilities and said, at the very least, I just need to let you know what you're doing is murder. Please consider,
Yeah.
or let me open my house up to your baby. Please have that baby, and I will adopt that baby.
And-
If we all did that, I mean, the U.S. would have a fit. This place would be full-on civil war, I truly believe. And the fact that it's not, a civil war is because I think we're just letting it all happen, or we're just shaking our heads at home saying, oh my goodness, what kind of world is this?
I do want to mention though, bringing up the abortion clinics. This past year we've had the largest increase in ladies choosing life and the decrease of abortions in North Carolina that we've had in longest time.
Amen.
And that's it's
Partly
mostly
to do because of you.
well,
You're
that's
throwing
just,
the numbers, man.
that's just one of your. I'm tilting the scales there,
Yeah.
but no, I mean we have pregnancy centers in Clayton, Smithfield. We've got I think there's like 2 or 3 in Raleigh. There's one that's been being started up there towards Durham County. Several in Sampson and all. We got a lot of the ladies out there who are really getting involved in this kind of ministry to try to step in and safeguard those who don't have a voice yet, which I think is exactly what Scripture teaches us to do in Isaiah, to give a voice to the voiceless. And but on even with all of these little, I would guess little moves and pushes towards this kind of good positive progress, we do see what, like we were just talking about, like everything it does seem to get, society keep getting worse, and they're making other propaganda to try to come against that, and it just even so, come quickly, Lord Jesus. But with all that, what do you think about that article though? I'm trying to switch to
I don't
something.
even know. Like,
Segues
we
again.
have all these articles, and I think we maybe scratched one.
We almost touched on the music.
We almost did it.
Yeah.
We're doing good though.
Yes.
What was the nutshell of the article? Was it talking about how
Worship
we're
music.
making music more about us and not about God?
Yeah, basically.
In-
like what's-
entertainment than not.
Like we kind of steal the whole rock star concert type deal and present it.
And I know
outside
it's wrong,
ways.
but I'm guilty of it. Like at church, I like to hear my kind of music.
Yeah,
And
most people
No,
do.
the drums are too loud.
And that's
well,
why
I
a lot
mean,
of the-
there's always something.
that's why a lot of the older churches are, getting
Jiggy with it.
older and older, and the younger population seems like it's not really sticking with more of the classical or the, I guess, archaic version of it. It's because we want to hear our music. They want to hear their music.
You want to get a coffee on the way in?
I would love to,
I know you
Comfortable
would.
seats.
but you don't have.
Well, that's where
any.
Secret Church came from, right? Is because this idea of David Platt saying he goes traveling around the world and they're meeting in a hut or they're meeting in a a basement somewhere because they know that they're going to
With threats on their life.
Yeah, they're going to get killed if they get caught. There's no band. There's no comfy chair in a coffee bar.
But I guess there's nothing wrong with it though, because we are supposed to sing hymns and songs and spiritual songs.
No, I
and,
think you can sing in any
make
style you
music.
want if you're singing to God.
Yes, to
His
God.
glory.
and I guess the balance has to come. I mean, with all this, there's a lot more, like I guess younger people in the church, who are going to be musically talented, and if they have a talent, just like we were talking about before, how they get big and we're questioning their Christianity or not, but even while they're starting to rise, if they're going through high school and they can play an instrument, should they not have that platform or the ability to play it for the Lord?
The contrast to the article, though, is worship being more horizontal than it is vertical.
Yes.
And I can see that being an issue with like younger kids or whatever that
Yeah.
are idolizing the lead guitarist. Look at him shred; he's awesome. Where it's not a worship thing at all. I mean, it's just basically a concert. So
So we should all go to one piano.
I don't know. I mean,
Well, I mean, and
Although I love the hymns too. So
I can't say anything. Like I love the hymns as well.
but I mean, the danger, it's not just the music. It's like, I like to listen to David Platt. And other people are like, oh, I can't stand the guy's voice. It sounds like he's always crying. That's kind of what I like about it.
It's sensitivity, right?
He sounds like he's truly emotional.
Genuine.
Like he's, genuinely heartbroken for what's going on in the world. And there's it's like, oh, I can't listen
Or
to David Platt. Or I
Does
don't
he,
like.
does he speak like that when he's just talking normally?
It's like,
Like
today
off the
at
microphone?
Walmart.
Well, he'll.
Or is it just the stage?
I think
Well, I would hope not.
Yeah, I
mean,
would
but,
hope
you
not
know,
either. I like
who
David
knows?
Platt.
it's like a performance, and
Yeah.
that's what it is. Is like the whole.
'Cause a lot of
all of
people
it
do
is a
that.
performance.
Oh yeah, the televangelists are kind of notorious for the crocodile tears. But so I think it's not just the music, but
Well-
it's certainly like that's
Another thing that'll cause you to be horizontal
Obvious.
as well. This is the one article that I kind of read that
Of
we
course.
don't have time to go over, but
There's several there. We can pick it up later.
we go all week, and then we get to this praise hour that we have, or praise half hour, and we're trying to have an immediate relationship with God, and it never works that
At
way.
least people coming in the church, and that's what we view it as, just a switch on and off.
But that's not. I mean, that's something you work at. I mean, you guys know when you don't pray or you're not in the Word like daily, how you can just kind of wither.
Yep.
And that whole like being prepared and leading up to it and going in there with a heart that is ready to worship.
Yeah. Certain churches shouldn't be, but what you get out of it from the other people, it's what you put into it. And like you said, it's a week-long commitment.
And after that week, you're off.
I mean, it's like having a date with your wife, and can you put the phone down while you're reading your you want to be present. And we do the same thing at church. What am I going to have for lunch? And I don't like that music.
Yes.
Or why is the preacher wearing that?
That's
why,
probably
is
one
he
of
wearing
the-
jeans? What's the matter with him? Is he going to hell?
Well,
That's probably one of the biggest complaints most churches have,
what the pastors
that they
dress-
run over and people are interfering with their scheduled lunch, or because a lot of people go out to eat after Sunday, which, I mean,
Well, that's part of the routine,
don't
right?
you dare go work on Sunday.
You
But
wanna-
I'm going to go out and eat on Sunday.
Do you want to know the adverse side, like to be a Sunday school teacher and have the kids not get picked up till well after service is left out?
Oh, I've got a couple like that.
What?
Oh, wait a minute, they're mine.
Yeah, exactly.
No,
No.
I do have a couple like that. But we actually had VBS, and there was a couple nights that we had. But
That's the mentality that I'm talking about. Is you're
it's
so
about us and
fixated
not
on
God.
self.
Right.
I mean, who knows what's going on in that? In service, somebody could.
or why the people are late.
I know why you're late.
But we had a VBS, and there was a couple nights that there was a family that didn't come get their kids until I think it was a couple nights. It was like an hour after we got done. But man, we had the biggest ball. We were up there trying to do handstand walks and just playing around, and it was fun. But it was just hanging out with the rest.
Well,
of them.
and it goes back to
And I
like
gave them gummies.
we just did that jam camp thing, and I was telling the students, I'm like, listen, jam camp is kind of like it's famous for its sports. It's like a week-long sport camp and what have you, and it's kind of grown into like all this other dance and drama and what have you, and food and games, and it's getting bigger every year. And I told them, but guys, this 50 minutes right now where we're going to talk about Jesus, this is the J and Jam,
Yep. That's what it's
Jesus
all
and
about.
me, right? And to remind them that that's really what it is. It's not about. I mean, you can go to a week-long soccer camp. You can go. There's a bazillion camps out there, but this is designed to bring you closer to God. It's that whole horizontal vertical thing, right?
Yeah.
How many people just sign up for jam camp or whatever kind of camp, VBS even? Parents just want their kids to go somewhere so that mom and dad can have
a couple
yeah,
hours to
like a
themselves.
date, and then that's the end of it. I think it's sad but true. I'm assuming that a lot of people are just kind of there to hey, a free evening camp for my kid. It's at a church. We'll get over that part. That's
Yeah, or using
necessary
sports
evil.
to further your relationship with God. I see that happening a lot too.
You don't think that's a thing that can happen?
Well, I
Or
think
should happen?
anything could be used to glorify God, but it's like I
don't know
think
about that
I think it's
either.
funny, isn't like these people they do the little Catholic Father, Son, Holy Spirit thing, or point up to the heavens and all that when they get a goal
Oh,
or
yeah,
whatever.
right, yeah.
And I was like, I think it's so funny. It's like I mean, people really think that God is the one who is on their side doing that for them in that moment. When why wouldn't he be for the other guy doing all he can for
Right.
the moment and the other guy?
I think that's kind of a broad brush. I think that like people are thanking God for the ability or the talents that they've
Ability,
given them.
You would
or,
hope
or the
so.
point they just got to win.
Could be. I mean, there's no telling in these days. You don't know what.
Yeah.
you
When I
know.
say anything, I mean music, sports, all that can be, I think, used for the glory of God. But
So,
sadly,
good
especially with the teenagers and stuff like that, it's used just to see how good you are. And
So this is a good segue into Colin Kaepernick. Okay,
absolutely, that's why I don't buy Nikes.
get out of here.
No, Nikes used to. They
My
were making
Betsy
we're wrapping it up.
Ross.
Yes, and they stopped selling them.
They made what now?
They were going to make those Betsy Ross flag
Yes,
shoes.
They would have the
Oh,
circle
yeah,
with
yeah.
the
Did they even
13
make them,
stars
or was
around
it just kind of an idea that they floated that
started
got
it,
shot down?
But that I'm not sure.
They started production on it, and then they.
Yes, and they kicked it out and they
36
stopped it because of what he was doing. And it was like, well, that has absolutely no racial overtone to it whatsoever. That's revolution, not civil war. But yet they stopped it because one athlete didn't like it or offended him. And I think, we're getting so bent out of shape, and we're twisting even our own heritage just for the sake of people's feelings. And I think the church is going to have to be leery of that when it comes to the way we question if someone's a Christian, if it's our music or sports, the whole spectrum there. But I think these articles are pretty good. I wish we had more time to read them.
I wish I had more time to read them as well. Can you
Do it on Monday, right?
yeah, could you
Send
maybe
them
give
on
us a
Monday.
couple more days to read through
A
them?
couple more minutes.
If you what are we going to be going over next week?
Proverbs 16.
All right.
Well,
Well,
I hope you all have enjoyed listening. If you have any questions, comments, or something you want to hear discussed, just leave some comments below, or just hit us up at thewordloverpodcast.com.
.com. But that was a long pause. Are you still unsure?
He's building up to it.
Thewordloverpodcast
.com.
at gmail.com. And
Beautiful.
maybe we'll check it out there too. But again, I'm your host, James Beasley. You've been listening to the Word Lover Podcast, here with
Josh Bunner.
and
Jeff, the pool boy.
the Pool Boy. It's been fun. God bless.
Politicians, morticians, Philistines, homophobes, skinheads, deadheads, tax evaders, street kids, alcoholics, workaholics, wise guys, dimwits, blue collars, white collars, warmongers, peaceniks. Breathe deep the breath of God. Breathe deep the breath of God. Suicidals, rock idols, shut-ins, dropouts, friendless, home.